So the issue of fracking in Florida has been a particular concern. There have been oil and gas companies that have applied for exploratory permits for exploratory wells from the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. They've also applied for permits from the EPA for wastewater injection wells.
Where is that located?
In Collier County, Hendry, and a couple counties, other counties across the state.
So Southwest Florida, and you've been expressing concern about how close that is to drinking water supplies and to the Big Cypress National Preserve. Why would that be a concern? Why would drilling in those areas concern you?
Sure. So we've seen this dirty drilling practice happening across the country and expand, and we've seen documented cases of contaminated drinking water and residents getting sick and beautiful landscapes being turned into industrial zones. And so these permits are frighteningly close to the panther habitat, the wild refuge for the panther habitat, and the homes of residents, and also the future drinking water for Collier County residents.
So you started to tell me some of the things that could go wrong with drilling, contaminated drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
What about the how much water do injection wells use often, and what kinds of chemicals might you find, and other types of pollution that are associated?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a report that's called Fracking by the Numbers, and it goes into some of the global warming pollution, some of the damage to the natural heritage, and the use of water. What could happen? What could be a worst case scenario, I guess?
Sure. Well, I think it's just important to look at some of the numbers nationally. So the report measures has found that we've used over 280 billion gallons of toxic wastewater that have been produced in 2012, and 250 billion gallons of water used. And then to dive into lands, there have been 360,000 acres of land degraded. So considering that this is so close to a protected space and to residents' drinking water, we wouldn't want anything to happen to those places. I mean, the bottom line is that we shouldn't have any kind of fracking or drilling near our treasured places, near Big Cypress, and certainly not near the drinking water sources of people in the county.
Your report primarily looks at fracking where there's shale deposits, and in Florida generally, except in the tip of the panhandle, mm-hmm. there's not shale, it's limestone. Mm-hmm. Give our listeners an idea of how the drilling process in limestone might be different than, or the same as in shale.
Sure. So in terms of drilling in limestone, I mean, again, the big picture is that it's still drilling with limestone would still turn our natural areas into industrial zones, and we'd still have to build all the infrastructure to drill. There would still be wastewater produced from that process, and we would have to deal with it. And actually, our report shows that a particular concern for Florida that deep disposal wells are a common destination for fracking waste and for a lot of drilling waste. And so, but these wells can fail over time, which allows the wastewater and its pollutants to mix with groundwater and surface water. So, for example, there was wastewater injected into a disposal well that contaminated 6.2 billion gallons of water in an aquifer in Midland, Texas. And then nationally, routine testing of injection wells in 2010 revealed that 2,300 failed to meet mechanical integrity requirements established by the EPA.
These permits have been applied for, but they haven't been granted. What happens is the EPA has to look at them, the DEP mm-hmm. has to look at them. Is there a way for citizens to get involved?
Sure. Well, the Department of Environmental Protection has granted some oil and gas companies exploratory permits. The EPA is considering permits for wastewater injection wells. There should be more on that in 2014. There's definitely room for citizens to get involved. We need to urge our elected officials to stand up and speak out against drilling. And so we actually have Senator State Senator Dwight Ballard has been very supportive. He's noted that given the extraordinary evidence and concern from constituents, that he sees no reason as to why we don't postpone any further drilling that could be detrimental to our water and ecosystem. So we echo those sentiments, and we're urging the Environmental Protection Agency, and we need other citizens to do the same, to stand up for Florida's drinking water in special places and reject permits that would facilitate any kind of fracking or drilling process in the state.
Thanks. Those are my only questions. Is there anything else our listeners need to know about this issue?
Sure. Well, I think it's also important to note that at the federal level, in terms of fracking, the first step is to close loopholes. So especially the ones that exempt toxic fracking waste from our nation's hazardous waste laws. And then second, the Obama administration should keep fracking away from our national parks and our national forests and our sources of drinking water for millions of Americans. And so that's consistent with some of the recommendations of the administration's own advisory committees.